right, one of my favorite guests to have on the program. We got my guy Jake Russell, Washington Post, does a great job as a sports editor there. And Jake, great to have you on the program. And we got to be talking some baseball here. It's Nats full season. Let's go.
Yeah, it is quite the roller coaster, much like a lot of baseball seasons are in this town. There are a lot of highs and lows to go with this young and developing team we have right in front of us.
I was just thinking about it, like, the 1931 anniversary passed a short time ago. Hey, they had a better record at the time than 1931.
Scott, I've always loved your sunny disposition. That is correct. They are outperforming their metrics from 2019, and with a much younger roster too. It's a little wild to think about the parallels there. There are a lot of things to be, you know, sunshiny about when it comes to looking at this roster. James Wood, first and foremost, he's just put himself right on the map right away. There's no Obviously it's not a sophomore slump because I guess his first season doesn't fully count as a rookie year. This is his first full year. There's no rookie jitters. He's got, ice in his veins every time he steps up at the plate. Nothing phases him. He's similar to Anthony Rendon in that matter. Like his heart rate does not change anytime he steps up at the plate or when he's in the outfield. He's a unicorn, and I know Nats fans are thinking years in advance now, oh man, they better sign him to an extension. He's a Boras client. Oh no, they better get working on that. He better not be another Soto. But my advice is, yes, that is obviously a natural, normal response, but he's, I believe, 6 years away from free agency. And if they do a Soto deal, 3.5 years away from where Soto was before they traded him. But for now, just enjoy it and bask in his performance because he's, you don't see too many guys like that come around very often.
So, back to what you're saying, there's some optimism with the club, but there's also on the other side some frustration. I think last week, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Ken Rosenthal wrote an article for The Athletic and kind of laid out the disappointment and frustration from a fan's perspective of what's going on in terms of ownership and player development from the Mike Rizzo side. What did you make of that column? And obviously there's some truth there, and also kind of explain of what you're seeing and hearing from a frustration standpoint from the fans of this rebuild is just taking too long.
Yeah, I think Ken Rosenthal, I think everything he wrote about was correct. The sticking point to me with that is obviously it's the lack of spending from ownership. And at the end of his story too, he mentions how Mike Rizzo was on the Sports Junkies in 2022 and said, this is going to be quicker than a rebuild. It's going to be a reboot. Well, it's 3 years later and they're still rebuilding. And, this past off season, it looked primed to be the off season where, these young guys are being called up this year. And the ones who have already been called up are going to try to take a step up in their progress. And the natural progression would be to supplement them with veteran talent. And they didn't do that. The biggest move they made offseason wise was trading for Nathaniel Lowe, which I think is a fantastic trade. I was surprised by the lack of willingness to spend. And it's, from a fan's perspective, the fans are essentially, the AI summary of what fans think about this is if you can't afford to own a baseball team, sell it. My second gripe would be the lack of proper drafting, the lack of hits in the draft. And that's on Mike Rizzo and his scouting staff. They've revamped the scouting staff in the last couple of years, but you got to hit at a much higher rate than they've been hitting, especially with first rounders. It has not been good the last decade or so, ever since Anthony Rendon in 2011. It hasn't been great. So there are several avenues where they need to improve. And if they don't spend next offseason, then that'll probably be a breaking point with the fan base.
And I've also seen, it seems like Davey Martinez has been getting some heat from the fan base, especially during that losing streak earlier in May. What do you make of the job Davey's done in terms of development, in-game coaching? What's his lifeline here like in Washington going forward?
Yeah, I think the main gripe is his patience and willingness to see players get out of slumps, like i.e. Josh Bell. His lifeline, he's obviously the longest tenured manager in Nats history, so he has a good track record there. And I can see why, I can see the argument for not keeping him after this year, but I also see the argument in terms of if you're keeping him around for this rebuild, it's only fair to let him see it through to when the team is finally ready to break through.
This is the big question I have, Nats fans have. How close are they to that breakthrough?
In my opinion, I think it's similar to how I felt this past offseason. I think it's just one big pitching piece and one big batting piece, maybe a couple big batting pieces, to supplement the rest of this young core. It seems like a positive addition to the clubhouse. Seems like everyone, the clubhouse seems like it's really tight knit. No matter what the results are, they've battled through it and they've stuck with it, with each other throughout the whole process. You can add a new bullpen piece too. They're 2 or 3 big pieces away from making a jump to playoff contender. And if you have these younger guys take big steps like James Wood, that just further accelerates the process. They've still got Brady House waiting in the wings in Rochester, and he could be the next, top prospect to come through, and he'll have his spot at third base. He's performed well in AAA so far. So, if you just sprinkle in a couple really high quality veterans, that should help quite a bit, I think.
All right, great insight, great perspective. Jake Russell, Washington Post. Jake, as always, great talking Nats baseball with you.
My pleasure. Always happy to be on.
All right, much more to come right here on Toyota Sports Talk. Stay with us.